Hi, friend, and welcome to this episode of Radiant Resilience. We are always looking for new guests on the podcast. I want to highlight you if you have a story of resilience that inspires others. Everyone has a story, and I believe that sharing yours can help others feel less alone. Are you ready to share your journey and inspire others? I want to hear from you. Every story has the power to impact lives and foster a supportive community. If you have a tale of overcoming adversity, personal growth, or a unique perspective on life's challenges, I would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. To become a guest, please email us directly at radientresiliencepodcast@gmail.com or click the link in the show notes to become a guest. Join us in spreading hope, strength, and inspiration one story at a time. Be brave and share your story so others feel less alone. I hope to see you soon. Welcome back, everybody, to Radiant Resilience. I have a very special guest today, Alannah Zilkowsky, who I have met through our hairstylist group, our Stylist Soul Tribe group that we are in. Alannah is a hairstylist, salon owner, and website designer specifically for hair salons and hairstylists. She lives all the way in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and has been in the hair industry for over 15 years. In her personal life, Alannah is an amateur beekeeper. I don't think I knew that about you. That's fun. Scuba diver and occasional snowshoer. She's a dog mom, plant lover, and world traveler. She travels to the Philippines to volunteer with Hair Aid, an Australian charity which teaches women basic haircutting skills so they can earn an income and support their families. So that's where we're going to go today. It's going to be a little bit of a lighter conversation, I think. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so Alannah, welcome and tell us about Hair Aid.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on here and being able to share the amazing charity that Hair Aid is with your audience.
Yeah.
Where did you want to get started?
I don't know. Why don't you talk about how you found out about Hair Aid? And yeah, also Alannah travels a lot like me. She goes to a lot of different countries and goes for long periods of time. So this is something that was right up her alley with helping these people. So maybe talk about Hair Aid first, what it is, how you found it, and then we can go into where you've been and your experiences.
Okay, so Hair Aid, like you said, it's an Australian charity that teaches women basic haircutting skills so they have the ability to earn an income and support their family. So they've been around for about 13 years and they have volunteer projects in Thailand, Cambodia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and recently they just expanded into Guatemala. And I actually heard about them probably about 6 years ago now. And Tabitha Coffey, who we all know and love, she's my idol. I grew up watching Tabitha's Salon Takeover and just an absolute inspiration. So she volunteered with Hair Aid in the Cambodia project about 6 years ago, posted about it on her social media, and that's the first time that I'd heard of Hair Aid.
Okay.
I was like, what is this amazing organization? Travel and hair, my two favorite things combined. Like, how do I get involved? So then I started following Hair Aid on Facebook, looked at their website. Their website lists all the upcoming international projects, and I just kept an eye on dates until there was one that lined up with my work schedule, my travel schedule. January is the best time for me to travel. As a hairstylist, it's everyone and their dog gets their haircut before Christmas. No one needs their haircut in January. That was a really great time to be able to volunteer with my first project.
Yeah, that's usually when we try to go away too. That January, February time is a good sweet spot in the year because everybody just like hunkers down for the winter and they're like exhausted from the holidays financially and energetically. So, where was the first one that you went and did? Where were you?
So both of the times that I've volunteered with Hair Aid, I've traveled currently to the Philippines. So I was there January 2020, right before the world shut down. And then I was there again in January 2023 to the Philippines. And that was the first project that they'd done in the Philippines since they'd reopened.
Okay, so you did, so just the Philippines. And then right before we started recording this, Alannah was telling me that she, towards the end of this year, is going to Guatemala and going to help out there. What was your experience in the Philippines and like how do they arrange where exactly? Do you just go to Manila and then do they send you other places or how does that work?
So the volunteer projects, they have one in Manila and they have one in Cebu. So the one in January is in Manila, the one in June is in Cebu. So I was in Manila, and that is a very large city. There's about 48 million people there, more than the
Yeah.
population of Canada entirely, in
Yeah.
the space of the city of New York, maybe a little bit bigger. So there was, on the first volunteer project, there was 20 hairstylists that are volunteering and were there for a week. And we were split up into 6 different groups, maybe 7 projects at 7 locations. So each of us had about 20 trainees and about 2 to 3 hairstylists per location that were teaching the haircutting skills on site.
So are you working with, you said it's specifically women, yeah?
Mhm.
And have they been trained at all in doing hair? Have they done hair at all? Or is this kind of one of those things where it's, okay, we're going to come in and if you want to do this, you can just sign up and we will teach you how to do hair?
Yeah, so it is mostly women. There has been some male trainees in the past, and I believe in Bali, they're working on a men's barbering program there.
Oh,
So
that would
they're
be so
looking
great.
specifically more for barbering volunteers to help train in those projects. How it works is depending on the location, Harriet has been in the Philippines for over 10 years. So they've got a lot of community connections, government connections, and things like
Sure.
that. Pre us being boots on the ground, they do have a list of trainees already pre-signed up who are interested and want the training. Harried is quite well known in
Mhm.
the communities because they have been there for so many years. It is a well-known organization, so there's always a list of people who want those skills. And they have no training, typically no training whatsoever. Day one, you are teaching them how to hold your scissors, how to hold your comb, how to sanitize and take care of your tools, how to greet a client, how to drape a client, how to do your classic 4 quadrant sectioning. And then you teach them a basic 1 line haircut. So a basic blunt haircut. And
Yep.
by the end of day one, they have all cut at least one haircut on a live model 1 length blunt haircut. By the end of day one, they have
Okay.
cut someone's hair. It is inspiring and amazing to see just how quickly they pick up the skills.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how many days do you usually do there?
So the volunteer project is a week in total,
Okay.
and the training is 5 full days. Day one is the basics, straight length haircut, a 1 length haircut. Day two is layering. And no, sorry, day two is diagonal back, diagonal forward. Day three is layering. Day four is short haircut, men's haircut. And day five is catching up on models and graduation day.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
then they have the skills and they can go out and just do this in their community.
Yep, absolutely. So the trainees who successfully complete the 5 day project, 5 day training, do all the models, get everything signed up on, they get what's called a business in the bag at the end of the week at their graduation. So it's a pencil case with a pair of scissors, 4 clips, and a comb. And with that, they are able to go out and start making money immediately, whether that be trading their neighbor for a bag of rice to put food on their family's table, or to go out in their community, put a chair on the side of the road and start cutting hair.
That's amazing. So they obviously don't have any licensing in any of these countries for that.
So they do in like professional salons, what you'd see in the
Okay.
mall, what you'd see in the street. There is a very large wealth disparity in
Yeah,
Manila. So you see huge skyscrapers.
sure.
There's some of the largest malls in the world, Mall of Asia are there. And then there are miles and miles of shanty towns and slum communities where things like licensing and rules and stuff don't typically apply like they do here.
Yeah, for sure. But it's still interesting because here they're so strict about the licensing that I don't know, even if you tried to do it, like people were tattling on people during COVID of going to their clients' houses and doing hair. And we were licensed professionals, but we weren't licensed to go to people's houses. It is interesting that even though they have the licensing there, it's not fully enforced in those parts of the city.
Mhm. Well, in those parts of the city, they don't have running water and
Yeah,
electricity.
for sure. Yeah.
So on the priority list of what they're taking care of, that kind of gets put to the wayside, unfortunately.
Yeah. So are you with the same group of people for those 5 days?
Yes, so the same group of trainees and typically the same hairdresser. You're paired with one or two other hairdressers, trainees, the educators. So You typically get to have a good rapport. Sometimes we switch it up on day 3 just to experience the other sites and other trainees. But you are with kind of the same core group for the week.
Yeah. So then you probably get to know those trainees quite well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. You definitely really bond with them and build relationships over that week. And it's a very intense experience and it is very intense learning and very focused. So it's amazing how much change in a week.
Do you get to know their life stories a little bit more? Do you get to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I was in the Philippines and volunteering, both of the times I was at a drug rehabilitation facility. So
Oh, wow.
the women that I was training, for the most part, were in there via sex trade work. So their pimps had
Mm.
gotten them hooked on drugs. So the training that they were receiving with Harried was allowing them to have the ability to earn an income and kind of have a new start to their life after they graduated from the treatment facility.
Oh, wow. What type of conversations were you having with them?
A lot of broken English, so they
That's true. Yeah.
typically we had translators and things like that. But
Okay.
one of the ladies, she was saying to me that there was 2 really standout experiences, and one of them was a lady who had told me actually that she wasn't super interested in cutting hair. She didn't really like it, but that she was in her 40s and she never actually had any formal education before whatsoever. She'd never been to any schooling. She had said to me, I don't really like haircutting, but it's so nice to know that I can learn, that I have the ability to learn something. And
Mm.
that's an experience that
Oh,
she hadn't had up until that point in her life, to know that she has the ability inside herself to learn a new skill.
wow.
Mm.
That's amazing. That had to feel so good too, to give
Mhm.
that to somebody.
Yeah, it's the empowering and that confidence that you can give to someone, whether or not they take the skills with them is
Sure.
really neither here nor there at that point. You're creating that confidence in someone that they are worthy, that they are valid, that they do
Mm.
have the ability inside of them to learn new things and improve their life.
Especially in that type of situation, there
Mhm.
was obviously sexual abuse happening there. That is already one of those things that's going to diminish your self-worth.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Oh, that's a
Mhm.
great story. I hope she went on to become a great hairdresser. Do you
Yeah.
ever get updates or anything like that?
So we do, especially heading back to the Philippines for the second time. You have people, former trainees that come and volunteer with you, which is really great. People who had taken hair aid training, say 2, 4 years earlier, and are continuing with their skills, they will come back as volunteers with hair aid to help us check haircuts, to help us with translations, to help us with demonstrations.
Okay.
And so you really get to hear from them. There's some superstars that now they're working in salons, or they have a little salon out of their house, or they've been able to move into a home with the money that they're earning from the skills that we've taught them.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
So, Guatemala's next.
Yeah.
And how are you feeling about that?
I'm really excited. I'm actually going to be booking my flights after our interview here today because it's been on my to-do list for a while and I got the notification that the prices are going up. So I've got to get on that. But I'm very excited to go to a new location. I absolutely love the Philippines and I've learned a little bit of Tagalog. The Filipino people are beautiful and wonderful. It's such a gorgeous country. I am
Mhm.
excited to have that hair aid experience in a new location. So I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And I don't know about you, but whenever I travel, every country and culture is so different. So when you get to change it up a little bit like that,
Mhm.
you get to learn a whole new language, culture, food, all the things. Then you'll have totally different stories from Guatemala. Are you working with some type of a program like you did in the Philippines with the sex workers, or is it just random people, or do they have that specified?
I'm not entirely sure yet. So when I was in the Philippines, it was only the one location that was a drug rehabilitation facility. The other 5 or 6 were on communities. So one of the training locations was a basketball court outside, and local people from the community were signed up. So that's more typical of what the locations
Okay.
are. Sometimes they partner. One of the other locations was the Project Pearls in the Philippines, which is an organization that helps women escaping domestic violence.
Okay.
So they had partnered specifically with them and were training the women that were in their facility so that they also had an ability to earn an income and support their families without needing to have that male influence in their life that they're moving
Mm.
away from.
Which is so hard in a lot of those countries too, right? They're still so male dominant in a lot of those countries that a lot of women just don't work and they don't have the means to a lot of the times
Hmm.
because especially once they have kids and stuff in those countries, they have to stay home and
Hmm.
do that. And so what an empowering thing to be able to go in there and help through that.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the partnerships and locations will be in Guatemala, but maybe we'll have to hop on and I'll show you the experience afterwards.
Yeah, that would be really great. And I loved Guatemala. We went last year and it was just, it's a lovely country. It's actually one of our top favorites of Latin America. Yeah, it's got a lot of really cool. I know you won't be traveling around a ton, but it'll still be a great experience. And the people are lovely too. I know the Philippines are known for being like they're very well known for being the nicest people in the world.
Yeah,
So I
so
bet that was,
welcoming.
and it's so true. When we went years ago, I felt that very much, very
Mhm.
hospitable, very kind. Do you want to talk about any more of your like travel experiences or is there anything that stands out to you that was, hardships in other countries or I don't know.
I think traveling in itself, like with Harried more, but just traveling in general really expands your view of the world, right?
Mhm.
So Canada, US, very similar. We're different in some ways, but we're first world countries, right? We know poverty and we know people who have experienced hardships, but poverty in other places of the world is just incomprehensible until you've seen it and then seen what privilege that we have here. I think traveling is just a beautiful way to really expand your horizons and see that the way that we do things is one way of doing things, but it's not necessarily right or wrong. Other places on the other side of the world do things differently, and we may not agree with them, but they're also probably doing it successfully and they're
Yeah.
happy about it. So seeing that there's other ways of doing things I think is a really beautiful way to expand how we do things.
And to just see how other people live because
Yeah.
we are also such Canada, not as much population wise, but as much as the US, but we're just such, the US here is such a big country and
Hmm.
we're very isolated with just Canada on one side, like you said, which is not culturally dramatically different, economically very different. And then Mexico on the other side, which is very different, but most people just go to the all-inclusive Cancun resorts and
Hmm.
don't get out to see actual Mexico. And so if you don't try to get outside of that, even Europe, even just okay, my first experience traveling was Australia. That was my
Hmm.
first big out of the country experience, which again, not super culturally different, not economically dramatically different, but still, I learned things that I didn't know. For example, I'm like, they get all of our celebrities. They get all of our, I thought they had like all their own things. And they do to a point. Just like Canada has their own celebrities and stuff like that, but they just get all of our stuff. And that was mind-boggling to me too. I don't know. It's just, we're just so isolated here. And to go see all the different parts of the world and how different people live, and that, like you said, it's okay. It's not frowned upon or anything. And to give perspective to
Hmm.
our lives for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most valuable things you can get out of a harried experience is that not to say that you and I have not been through hardships in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
However, we wake up in the morning and we have a roof over our head, we have food in our
Mhm.
stomach, we have running water and electricity, and that is a privilege that a large portion of the world does not have.
Yeah.
And to meet people like that and see how happy they are and how content
Mhm.
they are with their lives comparatively to people around here, I feel like they've got something figured out that we don't, and that appreciation and that humbling of what we have that we take for granted, I think is a big eye opener.
Yeah, for sure. And then their sense of community a lot of the time
Yeah.
too, which I think is interesting to touch on because we've become so isolated in our houses and our like
Hmm.
even neighborhoods don't even a lot of the times interact very much anymore. And like the slums of India or whatever. And even though, yeah, they don't have running water and they don't, but they work together as a community with the kids and with doing projects and helping each other. And they're happy too.
Yeah, I think North America really misses out on that community aspect. Basically, everywhere else I've gone, you go to Europe and it's a lot more of that coffee culture. You're hanging out, you're meeting up with people for breakfast, for lunch, for an espresso. In Southeast Asia, it's a lot more generational living. You are walking to the grocery store every day to get your food, whether that be in a high-end area or low income. That's really way more normalized than it is here. And we're just so isolated. Like you said, how many people know their neighbors comparatively to the rest of the world where people are playing out in parks and running to the neighbors and that sense of community that is really way more established everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Do you have any other stories that stand out to you? Like you shared the one of the one lady. Do you have any other, and whether it's with Hair Aid or just traveling in general, of a story of resilience or inspiration?
There's actually one of our harried volunteers that I love, Cynthia from Australia, and she's so wonderful. She's such a kind lady, and the traffic in the Philippines can be really overwhelming at first.
Yes.
And she had been traveling with her family before. She'd gone to Bali on vacations because in Australia, Bali is like their Mexico for
Yeah.
us. And this was the first time traveling alone for her and traveling to a third world country in the way that we were doing the volunteer work. So the first time that she went across the street, she was terrified. It took us a couple minutes. She held on two people's hands and she made it across the street.
Because in a
And
lot of
then,
these countries, you just have to walk, right?
oh
Like you
yeah,
just have
no,
to
traffic
walk,
lights aren't a thing.
right?
Traffic
And you
lights
have to
are not listened to.
and you have to trust that these cars and motorbikes and stuff are just going to stop when they see you.
Or just drive around you. You really got to have that. It's overwhelming at first, for sure. It was a thing. She crossed the street. It was overwhelming. It was very scary. And by the last day, we were going for breakfast in the morning. And all of a sudden, we look back and we're like, Cynthia, you just crossed the street by yourself. And it was just this big group celebration where we're all cheering for her. And just the change in herself from the first day where she's terrified to cross the street to 6 days later, she's just confidently having a conversation while she walks across the road. And that was just one of those things that as a volunteer, you don't expect to get out of it.
Yeah.
That was just really cool to watch for her, was the transformation and the confidence that she got in just getting out of her own comfort zone.
Yeah, which is another reason why travel is good because
Yeah.
it brings on stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a
Yeah.
really great story. We had a mountain guide in Malawi in Africa. We hiked with him for 5 days or whatever. And we actually still are very much in contact with him. His family owns a pineapple farm out there, and then he does the mountain guiding. And we just like really connected with him really well. But the t-shirt that he was wearing had holes in it, like all over it. And my husband was like, his name was Robert. And my husband goes, Robert, you need a new t-shirt. And we're sitting here thinking, we've been to the markets. The markets are like, it's 50 cents for a new t-shirt, right? $1 maybe. And so my husband was like, Robert, you need a new t-shirt. That one has holes all over it. And he goes, I can't afford one, which was just like, put so many things into perspective because I was like, what? Not even like a 50-cent dollar t-shirt at the market? And he's working his tail off doing these mountain guiding trips and stuff and just not making very much money doing it. And so that really put things into perspective. And then a little bit later, we were talking about vehicles because he was saying he wanted to go be a minibus driver. That was what he wanted to do instead of the mountain guiding, and that he would have to buy his own minibus and blah, blah, blah. And it was this whole conversation. And then at one point he's, do you guys have cars? And we were like, yeah. And he's like, how many cars do you have? And I was like, oh my God, I can't even, this poor guy who can't afford a 50-cent t-shirt. I do not want to tell him that I have 3 cars at home. So it was like, it's just a story that stood out in my mind. And like I said, we still are very much in contact with him. His pineapple farm is doing very well. And he's just like the sweetest man. And he has kids and he's just lovely. But it was so interesting. We gave him a very nice tip at the end of that trip because we wanted to be helpful. But I don't know. Those are some of the kind of the stories. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, so my husband, when he was in Vietnam in February, I had flown home because I went back to work because he has the winters off and he kept me up to date on his trips. His dad flew into Vietnam. So they had a driver that took them around to a couple of the sites in Vietnam. And one of them was my son's sanctuary, which is kind of Vietnam's Angkor Wat. It's actually older than Angkor
Okay.
Wat.
Hmm.
and the pictures were absolutely stunning. And Alan was hopping on telling me how his day was, and he's sending me all these pictures with the tour guide. And so they'd hired this driver, and the driver was saying pretty much every day he goes to my son's sanctuary with the tourists and talked about his wife and his kids and everything. And we pull up and they park, and Alan was asking him a couple questions about the sanctuary. And the guy was like, "Oh, I've never actually been inside." And Alan said, "Don't you come here every day?" And he's, "Yeah, I can't afford to go in."
Oh.
Yeah. So then Alan was like, "Can we take you?" And he was like, "Sure." They took their driver with them, and it's like a $6 entry fee. It's very
Hmm.
inexpensive for us for what would be considered. Think of how much you have to pay to enter any sort of museums in the States or in Europe
Yeah.
and things like that. It's pennies on the dollar. I just kept getting all these adorable pictures and selfies of them taking the guide around. And it's just beautiful that you're able to show someone that experience that we just take for granted. And you just assume, man, this guy's been coming here every day for years and never got to
And
experience it.
he would just wait outside for the
Just
tourists to
wait
come back
outside.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's a great story. He'll probably remember that the rest of his life.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, I love travel. It's so great. So do you think you'll keep doing, are you going to try to do a trip a year with Hair Aid?
Yeah, so that's actually why I started Breeze Web Designs, was the website design for hair salons and hairstylists, and now I do Google My Business Management as well, was because I really wanted to be able to have an income where I could work remotely and pull back from working behind the chair. I still absolutely love doing hair. I don't see myself not working behind the chair, but working more part-time so that I have the ability to go ideally to 2 Hair Aid projects a year, minimum one, but ideally 2 in the next couple of years, and then still have that income coming in so that I can afford to be able to go. Yeah, so that's my goal, is to be able to continue volunteering, because it is absolutely like one of my favorite things to do, is to really share my skills and teach someone how to cut hair. And it really does change their life. It's
Oh,
amazing.
I bet. Did you always want to teach? Did you ever think about working in a beauty school and stuff like that?
So I have trained apprentices before. I used to be the trainer for Team Alberta, which for Skills Canada, which is, I don't know if you have something comparable in the States, but it's a hair competition for apprentices and new
I don't think we
grads.
have anything like that.
Yeah, so it's really cool. It's cuts and colors on mannequin heads and things like that. So I was the trainer for Team Alberta. I really enjoy teaching people. I had apprentices over the years. I really enjoy teaching people who have this crave to really want to learn. And I found that it was a bit more like pulling teeth when I had young apprentices, trying to be like, "Come on, I don't want to be the one who wants this more than you do." I couldn't see myself being like a cosmetology school teacher or training younger people, because I feel like I just don't have that patience that I feel like you need.
And I don't know about you guys in Canada, but our beauty school, I was told when I started beauty school that only like 50% or less of us would actually end up doing hair,
Yeah, I
which
think.
blew my mind and was 100% true because I kept in touch with a few girls afterwards. I don't talk to them anymore, but a few girls afterwards who just never went and took their licensing test.
Mhm.
Or they did, and then they started working in a salon and decided they didn't want to work anymore in hair. And so, like, how many people in the beauty schools are going and then are like, they don't really want to do it and they don't really want
Mhm.
to be there?
Yeah. There's actually been educators on the last Hair Aid volunteer project that I did. And she was so funny. She was a beauty school, cosmetology school educator. And she's like, "Man, I feel bad for my students." And we're like, "Why?" And she's, "Because I'm going to come back there and be like, listen, I taught a Filipino woman who does not speak any English how to do this haircut in 3 days. Like, come on, like, pick it up."
I love that. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. So, this is more up your alley because they actually want to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is absolutely mind-boggling how quickly they pick it up. I'm pretty sure I didn't cut hair on a mannequin for the first 2 weeks of school. And by the end of day one, they are cutting on a live model and they are crushing it. They're doing so good.
That's
And then
amazing.
they leave for the day, they come back the next day, and it's like they went to sleep, everything internalized, and they're just like 10 times better the next day. It's so wild to see. You actually can't believe it until you're there, that you're like, there's no way at the end of 5 days they're going to know how to do a blunt line haircut, an A-line bob, a layered haircut, men's haircut, but they're doing it. It's really beautiful to watch and so inspiring.
Do you think some of that has to do with the want and the need to learn those skills? I think in general, in first world countries, we take school for granted. Even from like elementary school, kids in Africa, they're like so stoked to go to school. And then our kids are like, I don't want to get up. I don't want to go to school. So do you think that has something to do with it, that they just have more of a drive and they want to slash need to learn these skills, and so they pick it up faster?
Absolutely. I really think so, because when you're teaching them that they can, at the end of this, trade their neighbor for a bag of rice for a
That's
haircut,
amazing.
and you just see their eyes light up, and then you're like, and then you can start charging 10 pesos. It's like 10 cents. And they're like,
Yeah.
10 pesos. And you're like, yeah, and you get good. You charge 20 pesos, 30 pesos. And they're like, wow, like you are literally teaching them the skills that the next week they can go out and use to make money. And no one can ever take those skills away from them.
Mhm.
I have $600, $700 scissors. I've got a $3,000 hydraulic chair in my salon. But realistically, I can cut your hair on my front lawn with a stool and a pair of kitchen scissors. Am I going to be stoked about it? No, but that's a skill now that you don't need electricity for. You don't need a lot of fancy tools and overhead. It really is life-changing skills that they can use immediately to go make money with. So yeah, that motivation for them is, being able to put food on their family's table that they didn't have the ability to do a week earlier.
That's amazing and so empowering and so
Mm-hmm.
great. I didn't even think about them trading that skill for food and things like that, but that's in other countries, the bartering system is definitely more there than we're just so used to trading money for everything. So
Well,
cool.
and one of the things, especially in the Philippines, is there is so much poverty. And like you had said with education, we take it for granted in first world countries. But in the Philippines, it's very well understood that the way to break the poverty cycle is through education. And there is a lot of government funded education, and especially with the kindergartens and like the lower elementary school, but it is all uniformed. So all the kids wear a uniform. Girls, not so much, you can tie your hair back, but for boys, there's a dress code. And part of the dress code is a military style haircut where it does not touch your collar and it does not touch your
Mhm.
ears. And if you come to school and you are out of uniform, as in your hair is not cut to standards, you will get sent home.
Oh, wow.
So for families who have been able to put their kids into education and they see the potential for those kids, if the family has a choice between getting their kids haircut and buying a bag of rice, they will get their kids haircut so that they can go
Wow.
to school. So even just for the women to have the ability to be their community's hair cutter so that the kids in those community can go to school and get an education, that in itself is just life changing for the community who may not have had access to that before.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know they were that strict on I know a lot of countries do the uniforms. I did know
Mhm.
that. I didn't know they were that strict on the haircuts and stuff.
Mhm.
Wow, that's amazing. And you guys teach them all the men's haircuts and stuff too, then, huh?
Yeah, it's scissor over comb with the men's work, or
Not clippers.
so yeah, with clippers in the barbering program, they are working on getting clippers. The downfall of clippers is now you need electricity to plug them in
Right.
or charge them. There's a lot more maintenance and sharpening with the clippers. So to teach them just like the scissor over comb work is a lot more user friendly.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
my husband has gotten several haircuts in several different countries because he keeps it so short that he likes to get it. When we're home, he gets a haircut like once a week. We just do a zero all the way down. But when we were in Colombia, he got a haircut. Where else? Oh, my favorite was he had a beard trim in India, and that was
Ooh.
hilarious. And I wish that was really long time ago. And I didn't have like a smartphone and stuff at that time. I just had the normal camera. And I wish that I recorded the entire thing because we went into this little local hole in the wall barber shop where, nothing but Indians there. And they like didn't speak English. And my husband had grown quite the beard and wanted it all taken off. And also, we were in a part of India where they really love the mustaches, so, like the Maharaja mustaches.
Yeah.
And so they were all like, "Are you sure you don't want to leave the mustache?" And he was like, "No, take it all off, take it all off." And they were like, "Are you sure?" Like, but anyway, so they did this whole and it was one of his first like proper beard shaves in like a barber shop. When they do the beard shaves, they do the hot towels a lot of the times and they do the whole like head massage and things like that. And he was not expecting any of that. And then I think that the people were just fucking with him because he was just the only Westerner in there.
Yeah.
And so they were doing the head massage and they literally, with this like oil stuff, and they literally started like rubbing his eyeballs. And he's just like sitting in this chair, like writhing, and they're all laughing, right?
Oh yeah.
All
They're
laughing.
messing with him.
It was such a fun experience, and they loved it, and we loved it, and it was so cheap, but we tried to give him a big tip, and it's been a fun experience. I've gotten to go in a lot of different like barber shops and hair salons, and I check out the menus all the time and see what they're charging for stuff, and I look at their equipment, and it's super interesting in different countries to see all that stuff, and they do amazing jobs, truly.
Yeah. Alan, oh, I don't like him getting a haircut by anyone else, especially since he's grown his hair out, but he does get straight shaves wherever we go.
Okay.
Especially when we were in Vietnam, it was like $1 for a straight shave.
Yeah.
So it's not even worth buying a razor.
Yeah.
And they did massage and everything like that. And even though a lot of times there's the language barrier in there, I have a tattoo on the back of my neck of a pair of scissors. So I'm able to point and be like, I cut hair in Canada, and they're like, wow, and they're like going around and showing me. A lot of times they go out of their way to be like, look, I'm opening the blade, it's fresh.
That was my thing in India too. I was like, the only thing I'm going to tell you that I'm going to be on top of is I'm going to watch that they've changed the blade, because the sanitation there, I was like, I don't know. But he did immediately. The guy, I didn't even say anything. The guy pulled out his straight razor, put a brand new blade in, and went for it. Yeah.
Yeah. The last one Alan got, he was like, they shaved my ears. Are my ears hairy? And I'm like, not anymore, apparently.
That's so funny. The poor guys. My husband's balding, so it's like running down his face. It's coming out his ears. His eyebrows are getting crazy. He has to do his nose every once in a while. He's probably going to love that I'm talking about this.
Oh yeah, Alan and I'll listen to this podcast afterwards. And since he's listening to it right now, we got to check on Fred. That's his nose hair friend that I have to pluck every once in a while. It starts growing out and then it curls over.
Yes, Colin has one of those too. You named it.
Yeah, his name's Fred. I'm gonna be like, Fred's getting out of control.
That's so funny. Oh, gotta love him. But I've gotten some shampoo blow dries in other countries. I did it in Turkey, and I feel like I did it a couple other places, but I've never let anybody cut or color my hair in another country. That makes me a little bit nervous, but it's fun to go in with Colin to all the places and check it out.
I was a haircut model, demo model in the Philippines. The first time I was there, we needed a model for I think a layer or something like that. So one of the Australian girls, Crystal, she cut my hair. So I was okay with that. And then when I was in Vietnam this past January, I got one of those head spas done that are all the rage now.
Oh yeah. Aren't they really popular in Korea right now too?
Yeah, they're getting popular I think they came from Korea. I think that was like more of a Asian start anyway. So literally everywhere in Vietnam does massages and now head spas. So 10 places up and down the street. So I went to a nice one. I tried it out. Personally, not my thing. I don't like other people washing and blow drying my hair on a good day. And the products were not meant for my hair type. I had to go wash it afterwards because it's pretty greasy, but
oh shoot.
It's a cool experience to try.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. Even when I go to blow dry bars here, they just don't do it the way that I would do it. I think it's just being a hairdresser, right? Like we're just picky about that stuff. So I'm like, man, I wish I just did this myself. But it's so nice to have somebody else do it every once in a while. Yeah. But yeah, I feel like the guy, when I got it done when I did the shampoo blow dry in Istanbul, I feel like I was so excited because we've been traveling for 2 months. I don't bring a blow dryer, curling iron. No. I air dry all natural when I go on my trip. So it'd been like 2 months or a month and a half of not doing my hair. And I was so excited. and he washed my hair and he didn't put conditioner in it. And so then I was like, maybe he's going to do like a leave on or something like that. And I think he did something, but like my hair was so staticky afterwards. It's like, I do feel
Oh.
better, but not as much better as I thought I might. But it's just
Mhm.
different, right? They have different
Yeah.
hair types they work with. Is that something that you've been concerned about going to these other countries, is working on different hair types? Or are you pretty confident in all the different ethnic hair types?
Yeah, so most of the time, the places that I've gone to, it's typically just straight hair. So you're not working with a lot of different curl patterns. We do touch on that a little bit in the training, but we don't go into any of the curly girl methods or anything like that. You're just teaching haircut is haircut, layers are layers. Those are obviously those are more advanced techniques. We are just doing the bare basics
Yeah.
for the training. But I am excited to see what the different textures will be like in Guatemala, because both times I've just gone with the Philippines, which is super, everyone's hair is just straight. So it
Yeah.
does make that definitely easier. Some of the downfalls are that like that overly straight hair where you see every single
Every
mistake.
line. Yeah.
That's a bit more difficult, especially with the men's cutting, where you're like, okay, I don't want to get too advanced into like point cutting and stuff like that, but there's some lines in there we need to work on. So
Yeah, Guatemala will be different. They have a varying variety. They've got
yeah.
most of the country is like Mayan descent, but then on the eastern coast, they have a lot of the Caribbean influence there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be your more ethnic, curly, Afro-y type hair. So it's really interesting. But most of the country is going to be that like Mayan type hair, probably.
Yeah.
And I don't know if in Antigua if you'll get much of the Caribbean influence there, but you may get a few.
Yeah. I'm
But
excited to see.
I'm so excited for you. I'm excited to talk to you about it afterwards too.
Yeah.
But I know that we need to start wrapping up here. Do you have any like final words or final things you want to say? Or I can link everything to Hair Aid in the show notes. Just if anybody's interested in trying to do that, they can jump on there. But any final words about Hair Aid, about traveling, about anything?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on here.
Yeah.
It was really great chatting with you. For any of the listeners, if you're a hairdresser and you're interested in volunteering with Hair Aid, they're always looking for hairdressers. You do not need to have an education background whatsoever. Everything they will help you with flights, your project costs includes accommodations, your insurance, your transportation, all of that stuff. And then for anyone who's not a hairdresser who's listening to the podcast, they're always looking for sponsorships and donations, whether that's corporate sponsorships or just an individual sponsorship. Hair Aid is a registered charity in the States, so you can get a tax receipt for any cash donations. But everything that they do is volunteer run, including all of the donations. When they get a kit at the end, like the clips, scissors, combs, everything like that, all of that's donated. So they are also looking for just any sort of support, whether that be connections, financial support. It is a really beautiful, phenomenal, impactful organization that it is still a smaller charity. So a small donation really goes a long way. There's some big charities out there where $100 or $500 is a drop in the bucket and really doesn't make a lot of impact. Whereas for Hair Aid, money like that really does go a long way in changing people's lives.
I love that. I'm going to have to get my button gear and go do one of those with you one of these times.
Absolutely. Like traveling in hair. And I typically like butt end a trip on the end of it, whether it be exploring the Philippines or going to Thailand before you go to the Philippines. You can always tie in a little extra personal traveling in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's only 5 days. Well,
Yeah.
but we're people that travel much longer than the average human being. So I'm like, oh, I'm only going somewhere for 3 weeks. And people are like, only 3 weeks. I'm like, that's short for me. Anyways, okay. Thank you so much for coming on here and talking about that and sharing those stories. I think it's really important that we all hear those types of stories, especially people who don't do a lot of traveling. And yeah, I think you've sold me. I got to figure out one of those to do. I'm going to keep an eye on them and see when I can do it. So thanks so much for coming on, and maybe we'll have you back after your Guatemala experience and we can talk about that and some of the experiences you had then.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. And thank you, Alannah, for coming on. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the stories shared, please consider following us on your preferred podcast platform. Your ratings and reviews make a huge difference. They help us reach more listeners and continue bringing you engaging, insightful content. We appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Until next time, keep listening, growing, and sharing.